Hello, family. Welcome to JFK Today, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper, and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. The overview today, hurricanes and FEMA and conspiracies, but I promise it's going to be a good one. So, first, a couple quick hits. I've been following the Supreme Court of Georgia down to lower courts, just bouncing back and forth on each other with the 6-week abortion ban. Just as I was leaving, the Georgia Supreme Court reinstated a 6-week abortion ban in the state. It's provoking this massive backlash. Of course, to reinstate it, it meant that it was overturned. The ban was struck down a week ago and now revived while the court considers more fully the state's appeal against the ban striking. I'm just like, yes, leave it to the states. That was a great idea. Great sell, you guys. Thanks so much for that. So the Center for Reproductive Rights posted on Twitter that despite this devastating step back, we are prepared to fight like hell when the case goes before the Georgia Supreme Court. This is not over and we are not backing down. And you know what? That got me fired up. I'm all here for that. So there's a similar issue happening in Texas. I mean, it's happening all over. Let's just be honest. But the White House warned the Supreme Court has allowed Texas to deny women abortions in emergencies. I just want you to think about that for a second, right? Like, go back to a couple episodes ago, you know that women are dying needlessly. There's absolutely no reason. These are preventable deaths that are happening. They're disproportionately impacting poor women, black women, women of color, right? They're nothing to the system, nothing to the states. They're just an idea, a concept. And just knowing the impossible position we're in and the fact that we still have to take action is just one of the most frustrating things. Oh, I'm doing it. I'm taking action. But I'm furious. Anyway, I got to tell you, though, I did revisit the whole call her daddy thing because I realized that my major gripe, so, in yesterday's episode, I mentioned the fact that I was just tired of these kind of softball interviews. I want something more challenging, more aggressive. Like, imagine if media and journalism treated our world leaders with some level of, I don't want to say antagonism, but due diligence, right? Like, give us an answer to this, like give us an actual answer. But we've sort of like moved into this lane of they're just going to go where they're liked. But I will say, I thought about it. I sat with it. I thought about it. I looked at the reach because this call her daddy thing it originated from Barstool Sports, which is a kind of red pill manosphere kind of shit dome. Dave Portnoy is like a genuine piece of shit. So its origins are there. So there's a lot of right-wing people, specifically women, who listen to that show. And it is one of the most listened to shows in the country because, it's celebrities that are answering softball answers on sex. Like, it's just like, I may have had sex with that person. And, America loves that. We love that. So, look, I'll just say this. It means something, and I don't want to take away from the fact that this is a neck-and-neck race. And I thought about it, and I'm like, if it moved the needle for people who were unaware of this, maybe it's not the worst thing. I mean, the person who was doing the podcast, I think her name's Alex Cooper, she actually was against doing political interviews. There was a whole New York Times thing on it a little while ago, and she changed her mind because, of course, women's rights are on the chopping block. So you know what? I was like, all right. My real gripe is with mainstream media, and also, listen. This is me. Listen to how hard it is for me to try to be fair. Like, I've just listened to the struggle. Listen to how hard it is for me to be fair. I'll just say this. Kamala Harris broke down her policy platform, when it came to economy, when it came to abortion rights, and she seemed more like a person. And for these so-called undecideds, and you know that I reject that, I think it's a bunch of nonsense. But if they were there and they've been saying, hey, we don't know this person, we don't trust this person, we don't understand her policy, even though it's literally everywhere, if this brought that information to them, and that moves the needle even slightly, I'll take it. My real gripe is with mainstream media not doing its job. That being said, right, there was this funny moment. And I know because unfortunately, I visit the manosphere quite regularly. So get this. And Kamala Harris shared this to her own social media. There's this back and forth that Kamala and Alex, the interviewer, are having, when they're basically like, what's a law that took over control of men's bodies? Can you think of one? I can't think of one. Can you think of one? And they were like, tee. And immediately I was like, the draft. Like, the draft. And I knew all of these aggrieved men were good. They just wait to be like, me too, except not in all the other ways, but this. So obviously they jumped in there and they were like, the draft. And I was like, okay. So I thought of it, but then I immediately was like, that's nonsense. Because the draft hasn't been active since 1973. I'm like, get the fuck, you did not experience the draft. You don't know what that's like. The draft is not on the chopping block. But what's interesting is they don't even realize when they catch themselves, like, they were just like, this is messed up because we experienced the draft, men experienced the draft. And I'm just like, so you are opposed to governments taking control of people's bodies. You know when people self-own and don't even know it? Anyway, last quick hit, right? This is, sorry, I saw this and I have been laughing ever since. So in Idaho, there was a Meet the Candidates forum, right? And it was held last week in Kendrick, Idaho. This is a town with a population of 300 people. I was scouring the internet. So I'm like, give me local regional news. Where's the local regional news? So I'm like, what's happening in this forum? So Trish Carter Goodhart, right? Trish Carter Goodhart, she is a Democrat running for a House seat, right? So she pointed out something very normal, not at all scary, challenging point. Just a simple fact. She pointed out that discrimination and racism exists in Idaho. Yeah, it's Idaho, right? So this guy, this Republican foreman, he gets so angry that she says, he's apoplectic. That's a word I don't get to use enough. Red in the face even. And they have a back and forth, and he tells her to go back where you came from. And I just found that really funny because she was where she came from because she's Native. And like, do you remember we're talking, like she's where she came from. That's where she comes from. Carter Goodhart is a member of the Nez Perce tribe, which has a reservation smack in the middle of District 6, which is where they're based. And it's just really funny. And Foreman was born in Illinois. When Boise State Public Radio reached out to him for comment, he was like, nope, don't have one. I was like, oh, so suddenly you don't have anything to say? Here's the thing. Here's the thing that annoys me. I'm just like, I want to tell, like sometimes I'm always like, okay, what's the comeback to that? I'm like, okay, great. What am I going to do, run around telling white people to go back where they came from? Because aren't I just sending you to Europe? Is that that's just not a punishment. That's not enough of a punishment to me. I'm like, what? Go back to Europe, enjoy your afternoon siestas and your health care and your paid time off and altogether higher quality of life. Go enjoy the oceans and travel. No, I got to come up with something. I'm like, go back to what? Like the Caucasus Mountains? Like what? We got to figure out a place. Australia might be the place. You know, it might be the place. Although I don't know that other white people are as antagonized by tanned whites with blonde dreadlocks. I don't know if they're as antagonized by that as I am, but it was very disturbing to me in Bondi. Anyway, so, and the last thing, sorry, this is, we're about to get into the hurricanes, but I just had to say, I saw it in the news and I was like, So Melania is coming out. She's like, I am in support of abortion. And I thought, and? Like, isn't that terrible? I really thought, and imagine being, right, at one point, like the first lady. And the impact that anything that you think, feel, or say is about as measurable as a mouse fart on a windy day. Like, just imagine squandering all that potential. Anyway, pretty sure she still sleeps standing up. Hurricanes. A new hurricane approaches, right? Hurricane Milton. This is a Category 5. It is nearing Florida. It's likely to hit Tampa directly unless it shifts. As of the moment that I'm saying this, Hurricane Milton is the strongest storm on the planet this year. So just think about Hurricane Helene. Is that how you say it? Yeah. First, Milton, Helene, I'm like, no. Death, murder, kill. Like, call these hurricanes what they are. I'm tired of these soft social worker names. I listened to NBC6's John Morales. This guy, I have my favorites, right? I get my news and my stories and my plugs from my favorites. So he is the longest tenured TV meteorologist in South Florida. And there's clips on him online if you want to go, find it. But he was so emotional and serious as he was communicating the dangers of the storm and the impact that global warming has had in making these superstorms that we simply do not have the infrastructure to survive through. So we're approaching a point and time where multiple severe climate catastrophes will be happening simultaneously, right? And I'm looking at the impact of Hurricane Helene. That's what we're going to be unpacking a little bit, because it's so important for us to understand what elements are shaping and informing the narrative and emergency relief and equity, right? So there's a couple of things. Let's just really look at Hurricane Helene for a moment. It was unprecedented. This hurricane literally plundered entire communities. It killed more than 230 people across the Southeast. Of course, the epicenter of damage runs through western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee, right? So the aftermath, I've tried to organize this in two ways, right? The aftermath is felt, one in the fallout and the devastation and infrastructure. So just think damage, right? The other one is going to be rampant misinformation, but we're going to get there, right? So it's damage. And record rainfall in parts of Florida, Georgia, and North and South Carolina, and Tennessee. It's one of the deadliest hurricanes in modern times. It flooded manufacturing plants, right, that produces 60% of the nation's IV supply, right? So this will impact and have reverberations throughout the entire country, right? There's also a lithium mine in that region. There's a lot of conspiracy theories regarding that all over TikTok, but we'll get to the conspiracy theory. So in western North Carolina, the mountains molted. I didn't know mountains could molt. Did you? I had no idea. I thought that was reserved for insects and spiders and, maybe me after Joshua Tree. I thought but mountains molt, and it's not good when it happens too fast and too sudden. Think sliding down, think landslides, right? The rains fell on the already sodden clay soil, right? And so slope, how do you say that word? No, not slopes. It's the one where it's OUGH. I am making light a very serious matter because I can't say slowed off. I can't. Just when it falls off, you guys know what I'm talking. The molt, okay, and the mud and rocks. The point is, it fell. Okay, it slid down, and it hit houses, and buildings, and cars, and roads, and water pipes. It turned them into churning rivers that were swollen beyond imagination. So just if you're in this, you are literally watching everything fall apart, slide away, wash away. Your home is filled with water, right? That's what it looks like. So think about the immediate health concerns. We're really breaking down what the infrastructural damage of a hurricane is like, right? So the immediate health concerns, when you have a disaster like that: injuries, lack of clean water and safe food, challenges accessing medical supplies and treatments like insulin, oxygen, and dialysis. So this is a catastrophe for any person who has a disability, any person that needs consistent life-saving care or treatment, like dialysis, in order to stay alive. This is especially true given power outages and closed roads, right? So in a crisis like this, right, you can't separate yourself from people. Like, think about the state of our polarized world. But in catastrophes, none of that matters. If you see a hand, and that hand needs help, you reach out and you help it. You can't separate yourself from people. They are your saving grace. But this also raises the risk for infectious disease spread, right? So we got things like flus, think COVID. You've got fires in biolab facilities, asthma flare-ups, and breathing issues are going to be a problem. Basically, and just think, I'm a preemie. I'm not designed for these kinds of catastrophes. Somebody's going to have to put me in a backpack and just carry me around. That's what's going to have to happen. Water lines are washed away. So, and if you think about this, and like you really just have a visual in your mind, it's months. It takes months for even consistent running water to be moving again throughout the region. So this causes sanitation concerns, right? Which means we are now in a position where the spreads of viruses like hepatitis A and stomach bugs happen, right? And that's especially true if you don't have water to wash your hands. You don't have functioning toilets. In the long term, the region, right, will suffer from not like there's the access to medical care and the lingering effects of those things, but also just think of the stress and trauma that people experience in this, the quality of people who come out of this, right? Now let's move into misinformation. So what's happening now is that everyday people who may not vote the same way, people who may have suspicions about people who don't look like them, all that's out the window. All that's gone. Because it's about survival, and it's about care, and it's about really just having to face each other in the devastation. It is one of the most horrific, humbling experiences. So imagine my disgust, my rage, my ire when I'm seeing the right and the red-pilled fucking losers online trying to capitalize on this moment, on this disaster moment, and exploit the pain and devastation of everyday people. So in North Carolina and other states, there's been a barrage of conspiracy theories and false claims over efforts to bring relief after Hurricane Helene, right? And it's just, not only is it alarming and disheartening, it's having an impact on officials and workers who need to go down there. Just think about how we talked about abortion, right? Doctors and nurses that were too afraid to administer life-saving care and treatment because they could be charged as criminals. We are creating conditions where the people who are meant to actually help and provide aid are nervous or afraid to do so. Because despite the fact that there are normal people out there who are helping everybody and helping each other, these communities, there are always going to be people, even locally, that are trying to capitalize on this. So as thousands across the Southeast are grieving deaths and damage left by a Category 4 hurricane, right? There's been a torrent of conspiracy theories, rumors, and lies that are undermining the efforts to provide accurate information about what's going on and really making it difficult to get crucial resources. So there's been lies about lithium sales, right? That's that lithium mine that I mentioned in the region, right? And that communities are being bulldozed to cover up bodies left behind by the storm. FEMA has been forced to contend with claims, and you know that I'm no big fan of FEMA post-Hurricane Katrina, but we all know that this federal infrastructure, that's the infrastructure we have that gets disaster relief to regions. They're stretched to the limits right now. This is before Milton arrived. So even FEMA has had to contend with claims that it's stealing donations, it's diverting disaster aid to Ukraine, or refusing help from others. This is a lie that Musk himself spread. So North Carolina alone, There were more than 700 FEMA employees and over 1,000 National Guard personnel, right? So FEMA had approved $30 million in housing and other assistance. And nearly 1,400 people were housed in hotels through a FEMA program. They are doing things, right? A major factor for why intervention did not happen sooner during Hurricane Katrina is quite simply racism, right? It caused national outrage, national outroar. It unleashed Ye, who at one point made sense. So Donald Trump jumped in the fray. He falsely claimed that disaster relief funds were being diverted to house undocumented migrants, and suggested without an iota of evidence that Democrats were not eager to help conservative residents. This guy spreads lies like nobody's business. I can't wait until these two dumb bitches, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, start to go to war with each other, because when you have two thin-skinned, just nasty little narcissists, somebody's going to say something, and it's going to cause a massive rift. I can't wait. Evil always turns in on itself. I literally can't wait. But for now, they're aligned, and they are very dangerous. So local officials were saying it's dismaying not only to see resources diverted away from the emergency response to combat the falsehoods. That's right. You're hearing me. People that are trying to save lives have to spend time fighting and refuting lies. So instead of doing the life-saving work that they should be committed to, they also now have, what is that? These are the people that are claiming to care about these residents, right? That's what MAGA, that's what red-pilled losers, that's what Republicans in the GOP, even as they deny their own constituents care, aid, finances, and this is beyond the catastrophes, right? Beyond the disasters. They do that every day. That could be its own episode, to be honest with you. But they have to face contempt and mistrust in the communities they now have to serve. And look, you are never going to hear me be like, yeah, big government, yeah, trust the feds. Like, I'm a whole nignog, okay? I know better than that. But I understand what's at stake, and I'm like, you don't need to make conspiracies. What actually happens day to day because of late-stage capitalism, because of private equity interests, because of massive real estate lobbies and private equity lobbies and lobby groups, because of the way they just buy up. You don't need to make up conspiracies. The things that are actually happening thanks to late-stage capitalism and no antitrust laws make it so that the most unimaginably wild things true, right? Like the fact that emergency response care in America is gutted to nothing thanks to private equity. There used to be a pretty decent one here where it wouldn't cost you thousands of dollars. You know what happens when this is why I can't be sending the bad whites to Europe, because I'm like, if you get hit by a car, you get a limo to the hospital and then you walk out without a bill. Imagine a life like that. You know what? Send me to Europe. Send me there. But the point is like, there's real shit going on. And this is one of the most disgusting, detestable lies and liars out there, okay? Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? Not a stranger to misinformation at all. She's talking about they are controlling the weather. Who's the they, right? If you know Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know who the they are. Is? Now I feel like a cis. I'm like, what? They are. They are. We know who fuck it. We know what she's talking about. I'm sorry, guys. I had to bring a little levity to the situation. But here's the facts. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who raised the idea of Jewish space lasers, right? She literally said Jewish space lasers were behind wildfire outbreaks, right? I mean, I can't even. First of all, I just would never have put those words in. I've never heard them in succession before. I never would have thought to. It's Honestly, it sounds like the title of a fantastic anime I would absolutely watch. But coming out of the mouth of a Hitler-like bigot, right? That honestly looks like she eats like embryos for breakfast. Like she just looks nuts. She sounds nuts, she talks nuts. She is implying directly that Jewish people and people who align themselves with Jewish people can control the weather. So she's made several of these comments online, right? She believes that the US government can control the weather as well. It's Jewish people and the US government. In a post last week, right, she hit out to her 1.2 million followers on Twitter, the US House representative from Georgia, that's right, that Marjorie Taylor Greene, she says, quote, "Yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done." That wasn't dead air. That was me just trying to comprehend what I just got out of it. And then when she was pushed on it, she actually doubled down. And then she said, CBS 9 years ago talked about lasers controlling the weather. But it didn't say that. like I actually watched the clip from 2013, and CBS had done a news broadcast about experimental efforts to induce rain and lightning using lasers. That's not the same. And it didn't really work that well. Okay, here's the end point. This is the thing to remember, right? Is that the hurricane and the disasters are politically charged online, on the ground, right? In order to survive these moments, you need cooperation, you need goodwill. And despite the fact that right-wing lunatics are online trying to capitalize on disaster and exploit the pain and suffering of their fellow people, right? Just like what Trump and Musk are doing to them. Not that I'm sitting here saying that I'm caping for these. I'm not. I just understand how power works, right? There's so many things that are moving through my mind. I'm thinking about the fact that like we've reduced anti-Semitism, the term, to nothing. Just the mere mention of Zionism, it could be could be called anti-Semitism. Just the mere mention of Palestine could be determined as anti-Semitism. And we've got literal Nazis sitting in Congress. Why doesn't AIPAC focus on her? That's a question one ought to be thinking of at this moment. And it's very simple. Well, that's probably for another episode, but I think we all know, right? To so many folks here, it's okay to align yourselves with far right-wing extremists as long as they see through your goals. It doesn't matter that they'll turn on you just as quickly. So, am I good on time? I'm not good on, okay, good. I was gonna get into the other thing. I'll just say this, right? So, we're in a weird position. This is a good place to end. We're in a weird position, right? Think about this. Just indulge me for a moment. I'm gonna tell you what Kamala Harris said on October 5th. She put this on X. Is everybody just posting on that platform? Like, why am I there? It's where the news is, you guys. I can't help it. Anyway, so she goes, the people of Lebanon are facing an increasingly dire humanitarian situation. I am concerned about the security and well-being of civilians suffering in Lebanon and will continue working to help meet the needs of all civilians there. To that end, she didn't sing that part, that's me. To that end, the U.S. will provide nearly $157 million in additional assistance to the people of Lebanon for essential needs such as food, shelter, water, protection, and sanitation to help those who have been displaced by recent conflict. This additional support brings the total U.S. assistance to Lebanon over the last year to over $385 million. So that's Kamala Harris talking about sending aid to Lebanon, right? We were sending $385 million in aid over the last year, while also co-signing, along with Joe Biden, who's still the acting president, the bombs that enabled the crisis to begin with. That's one reality, right? And the other reality This is where we're in. Like this is where we are. We're right in between these really impossible places. On the other side, you have the right, trying with everything that they have to deny the fact that climate crisis and climate catastrophe is real, right? They're saying to Kamala Harris, look at her, she's sending aid money there, but she's not sending it to the people in Asheville. She's not sending it to the people in Asheville. And actually, like through these federal programs, she actually did go there herself. Not that I'm ever caping for Kamala Harris, but she did go down there. She was actually supposed to be on Call Her Daddy. I hate saying that. But she, pushed it off, and she went down there and took stock of the situation, came back up. It's a very tight race. And so, yeah. But they're accusing her of sending aid and criticizing her. They're saying, look, you're sending aid to Lebanon. You're sending aid to Ukraine. You should be only focused about people here in Asheville while denying that the climate crisis exists. Do you see how weird that is? Let me try to say that more succinctly. Kamala Harris, right, on one side, right, and everything that she represents, the progressives and the liberals and everything else, right, sending aid to Lebanon while also sending the bombs that are blowing Lebanon up. And on the other side, we have people who are criticizing her for sending aid to Lebanon while also denying, right, that the climate crisis that has exacerbated the conditions for people in Asheville. They're denying it. They support fascism, authoritarianism, right-wing bigots, right, that would just make the conditions here so much worse in every conceivable way. We're right between those two. That's where we are. That's why things feel so unbelievably wild, unbelievably nuts. But I am a history guy, and because I'm not white, it didn't make me more conservative. So I like history, and I'll just say, as much as social media has exacerbated so many things, these conditions are not unique. And honestly, people like us, everyday people like us, got together and had wins even under harsher conditions. That's the thing that always humbles me. We are so capable. And I know this might seem out there, but I'm like, whatever you're thinking, whatever's in your mind, don't just consume content, just create. Be in touch with that artistic self, because it's been words and actions. That's the thing that changes everything, and that's the thing that we're capable of. We're still here. I look at these things and I'm like, as long as we can understand and translate what is happening, there's always going to be openings. There's always going to be keys. And right now, one of the most urgent things is what is going to happen on November 5th, right? It just touches upon so much of what we've just talked about. Ooh, I feel so wild. Listen, if I see a hurricane coming, I'm out. I'll eat as many apple seeds as possible. Like, how many apple seeds would it take to kill me? I'll eat them. I love apples. I'll eat them. I'm not dealing with I can't. I'm too little to deal with a hurricane. I'll get swept up. You'll never see me again. I'll be gone. So we got to do some shit. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm in California, so probably a wildfire before a hurricane. Earthquake. Oh, no. Okay. Well, you know what? Get your to-go bags ready. That's the one thing I'll say. I've been reading a lot about just, how helpful it is just to have, a thing ready. They call it a to-go bag, but it really could be a box or anything else. With the flashlight and the batteries and the radio and, the water. Just have it. I don't know. But also some of your favorite books. Okay, no, I'm getting off topic. Anyway, we got this shit. We are literally on a countdown, but we've got to edge this out because we've got to stem the flow of vileness. And then on our 2 feet, we keep the fight going. So with that, why don't we hit the voicemails for the question of the day?
Hey, this is Riley from Weehawken, New Jersey. And I was wondering if Trump loses and retreats from the political scene, do you think the legacy of not accepting the results of our elections will continue on in the Republican MAGA world?
Riley, that's a good question. And the answer is yes. It will continue on. But guess what? all these weirdo anti-vaxxers that came out swinging against the COVID vaccine, they were always there. All these weirdos who are trying to make this, our education system and really the country itself, a theocracy, they were always there. They failed. Every effort that they made, creationism was in the schools, they lost. They made a game plan and they came back swinging. Our job is to swing back. We have to make that shit so uncool, so unnecessary, so boring that nobody wants to pay attention to it anymore because it's always been there. We just didn't give a shit. We couldn't hear them. They sounded like loons. Our job, I think, is to normalize the process again. And I and the Overton window has gone so far to the right that I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's more like the primary, I go back to Toni Morrison often. She says, the primary role of racism is distraction. And I think part of why I love this show is because we can just unpack or ignore the unnecessary and focus on what we have agency over, what we have power over. And so these kinds of malcontents who are deeply invested in chaos and nihilism, they always have existed. And you know what? We've had them on the left too. They just now have a little platform and they can find each other, the fucking losers. They're just all over the place. So our job is to just be very unentertained by the nonsense and to make clear the actual real things that sound like conspiracies but aren't, that are happening to us. And I do think that's happening. And I do. And I'll end with this, Trump lost once. He won once. It shouldn't be this close. It should never be this close. But it is, and it is by design, and not ours, right? So we do win when we fight. So the key thing is to fight and to not stop. Because there's always going to be people throwing bullshit and nonsense and distractions and accusations at us every day. Just think about your frenemy, if you have one. Think about work. There's always something, but we got to stay the course. And also, stick your foot out and trip some hoes on occasion. Anyway, with that, thank you so much for that question. It definitely had me thinking. With that, why don't we cue that end music up? I just want to say, y'all, thank you so much for listening to JFK Today. It means the world to me. The show really is a labor of love. We are everywhere that podcasts are. New episodes drop 4 times a week. I want to hear from you. Don't forget to drop an email or voice note question to jfktodayshow@gmail.com. Shout out to KR, Carolyn, and the JFK team. And shout out to you, the listeners that make it all possible. Love you. Peace.